everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm very excited today to be reviewing the second of 4 Wolverine themed Marvel Legend 2-pack sets from Hasbro. Of course, it is Wolverine's 50th anniversary and we have a number of these sets to celebrate different eras of the character. And of course, it was inevitable that we would get a Wolverine and Sabretooth 2-pack. This is probably the most exciting of the 4 sets in my opinion. I love these two going at it and I'm really excited to delve into this set today. So let's kick off by taking a look at the packaging. Now I have to say Hasbro have really stepped up their game I think this year in terms of what their packaging looks like for these anniversary sets. First of all, of course, it's great to have the window display back with the plastic here so we can see the figures up front and centre. We have this colourful yellow card behind them which we'll take a closer look at in a moment. But of course we have the Wolverine branding and then we have what's essentially black borders, but we have these really artistic rips, these claw marks tearing through, and underneath we can see this fantastic artwork which wraps around to the side panel. And on one side we can see Wolverine in his civilian outfit, and then on the other, we flip it over, we see Sabretooth. And if you're wondering who the artist is who's been commissioned for this brand new piece of artwork, it is none other than comics legend Adam Kubert. And if we take a look at the back of the packaging, we can see this artwork up front and centre in this wonderful display here, which is paying homage to an earlier Wolverine comic book cover. This looks absolutely fantastic. This is really displayable in its own right. There's a little bit of bio on the right hand side, but it's still quite minimal in terms of text, and this is really very impressive. So this is something you can put on your shelf and display it quite happily, front or back. I also want to focus a little bit on the interior card inlay as well. This is made up of a collage. We've seen this before on many different action figures now across the years, but what I particularly like here is that this is taken all from one particular issue of Wolverine. Various different panels have been assembled here, and I think this is really striking and it gives it its own unique identity, which I think is really fun. First up then, let's take a look at the Wolverine figure. Now I'm tremendously excited about this because I've always wanted a Wolverine in his civvies, and we've had so many Wolverine figures across the years. It's hard to believe we haven't had one quite like this. The nearest one I suppose would be the one in the black vest with the jeans and the cowboy hat, but this is way better. I love this shirt that he's wearing. And if we take a closer look at this head sculpt, we'll see that this is actually brand new. Whilst yes, we've had this Wolverine in the hat previously, it's a completely different sculpt. You can see these two compared here on screen, and you can see that almost everything about the head is completely different. The hair, for example, is much closer to the head, it's not sticking out as much, and the expression on the face is different, but also it's just a lot less lined, and it just has a lot less character, but that's in a good way. I actually way prefer this. This looks way more naturalistic or more realistic to what we see in the comic book. So I really like this. I think they've done a really good job with this. I think the proportions all work really well, and I think we've actually caught the essence of the character here in a more naturalistic way. So I really like this and I definitely commend them on it. But that's not the only new thing about this Wolverine or Logan figure, because we actually have a brand new body sculpt. I don't believe I've ever seen this torso before on any Marvel Legends figures, certainly not on a Wolverine, who obviously operates in a slightly different scale to the other 6-inch figures in this line, where he comes in about 5 inches tall. This is absolutely fantastic. This is really nice. I really like this torso. I think they've done a really good job with this shirt effect. Also has an interesting bit of articulation that we don't usually see in the 6-inch line of Marvel Legends figures, so that's also pretty cool. But I really like this shirt. I like that it's actually really nicely sculpted. Actually, you can see the lines cutting across to give that sense of depth and texture, which is really nice. And we see some nice paint tabs in the silver buttons at least, and of course on the chest as well we can actually see some of the chest hairs. I think this is done really well. It would have been nice if they had a little bit more shadowing and more of a paint wash running through it to give it a bit more depth, absolutely, but I think what we've got here is actually pretty good, so I'm not going to complain too much about that. Likewise, I suspect the arms are also new because you actually see the shirt sleeves are actually sculpted in the way they've been pushed up. Then of course we have the paint tabs with the hair again on the hands and on the lower forearm there, which all looks kind of new to me. I don't recall seeing this on a Wolverine figure previously, so this works really well. The other thing I really like are the claws. Now you'll notice across each of these sets some of the claws are actually different, and they show off a whole range of claw styles that they use Wolverine, which is actually kind of cool and something I hadn't noticed previously. Here he has the more blocky claws. Each one is separate and individual, though it plugs into his hands, and thankfully there's no curving, warping or anything like that. These look perfectly spaced and they look really good. In terms of the length and everything, it all looks pretty much spot on. Now, the legs and the boots have been recycled from that previous black-vested Wolverine, but I actually think it's really cool because we haven't seen this that often, to be fair. In fact, I think we've already seen it the once, so I think it's well worth recycling this, and I think it works really well. It's very appropriate with this outfit, and it looks great, so I can't really fault this. I think this looks really good. The only thing I might criticise it for is that it would have been nice to have a bit more of a wash running through it to give it that texture that I'm always talking about, but otherwise, a really nice sculpt. Articulation wise, he does have a ball joint at the top of the neck, allowing the head to spin all the way around, and it will kind of wobble left and right a little bit as well. Now, it does have a hinge, so it will allow the head to bob forwards and backwards. Not a huge range, but a pretty decent range all in all. There are ball joints in the shoulders, which are pretty obvious, so the arms will lift up and out. There's a complementary bicep swivel. There's a double joint at the elbow that does allow the lower forearm to arc all the way back towards the head, and then we have a pin swivel at the wrist, allowing the hand to rotate all the way around and hinge forwards and backwards. Now, we do have this very interesting joint at the top of the torso, but there's also a swivel at the waist, allowing the figure to move from side to side. But this weird joint up here, which is kind of unusual, feels like it will give you a lot more than it actually does. Now, it will move from side to side, and it will lean left and right a little bit, not as much as I was hoping for. And when it comes to bending forwards and backwards, it doesn't really have an awful lot in it at all. So this is kind of surprising. It looks like it offers a lot more than it actually does. Now, there's ball joints in the hips, allowing the legs to kick out to the side. There's the complementary thigh swivel at the top there, which is great to see. The legs will kick forwards and they'll go back, and then we have another double joint this time at the knee, allowing that lower leg to kick all the way back there. And then we finally have that ankle rocker, allowing the foot to hinge forwards and backwards, but also rock from side to side. He also comes with some fun accessories, including an open pair of gripping hands, an alternate head, and some playing cards. Now, the playing cards, which is an unusual extra, is all one sculpted piece, but they are actually quite nicely detailed. We can actually see some of the numbering on them, which is quite fun. And then on the back, we even have this Xavier logo as well, which is pretty cool. So I actually really like these. This was an unexpected added bonus, and I think it works really quite well. Now, the alternate head is interesting. The hat is a different colour. This time it is black, and you will notice there is a very slight smirk on his lips there. So a very subtle variant head. Again, I probably would have opted for something that was just a bit more dramatic, something that was just very noticeably different. We're seeing this a lot across these Wolverine sets where the alternate head is very subtle. It's just really a slight smirk. And maybe a snarling open mouth Wolverine would have been kind of cool on some of these. Nevertheless, I still think this works really well, particularly with this figure, of course, with him playing cards. I think that actually is quite a cool look for the character. So all in all, I'm going to give this figure 5 stars. There's really very little for me to complain about. The only criticism I would have is that maybe it would have been nice to have a little bit more of a paintbrush running through the figure, but that said, the paint apps we do have are actually really quite nice, and it helps you overlook that fact. And the other thing, I suppose, is that, you know, that upper torso joint feels like it should offer a lot more than it does. But other than that, there's an awful lot that's new about this version of the character, and I think they've done a tremendous job. And if you're like me and you really want a civilian Logan or Wolverine figure, this is probably the best one. Okay, so next up we have Sabretooth in his classic Jim Lee costume. I love this version of Sabretooth. For me, this is the definitive Sabretooth costume, and I love this figure as well. They've done a fantastic job. Now, if we start off by taking a look at this head sculpt, we can see he's got this snarling head. I think this is absolutely brilliant. I love the paint apps on the face. We can see there's a lot of red around the eyes, particularly on the lips and in the mouth, of course, the open tongue. I think this looks absolutely ferocious and is just spot on Sabretooth. We even see some texturizing going on in the sideburns as well. There's a bit of a wash running through the hair there, which is really very effective. And in case you're wondering whether this has just been simply recycled from the previous Sabretooth from the Apocalypse Build-A-Figure wave, fret no more, this is actually brand new. Now, I have to be honest, I had to really reference this. I do have both figures, but sadly I don't have the other one to hand to stand them next to each other. So I've been looking at a lot of photos over the weekend, and I have to say, yeah, actually this is a brand new sculpt. And I think it's noticeable as soon as you get out of the packaging, actually. It just looks bigger, and when you look really closely, there are actually a lot of individual differences. The torso is definitely broader in terms of the pectoral muscles, but this head sculpt, even though it looks very similar to the previous release one, is actually different. So to be fair, I think Hasbro have done a really good job here of actually updating what was already a pretty cool figure previously, and have given us an even better version of a pretty fantastic figure and character. So top marks here. I love what they've done here. For example, this is a much thicker, bigger mane. This is way more appropriate for the character. It just looks much more in proportion and much more authentic to what we see on the page as drawn by Jim Lee. So this is absolutely phenomenal stuff. I love this so far. Likewise, if we look at the hands or the legs or the feet, we can see that everything's in perfect proportion. The detail has been painted on when we look at the brown stripes here and there. Sadly, there is no paint wash running through this, just to give it a bit more of that depth and texture that I'm always going on about. But again, I'm willing to overlook it because the figure itself is actually really bright, colourful, and it looks so accurate, which is fantastic. Articulation wise, there is a ball joint at the top of the neck, allowing the head to spin from side to side. Sadly, it won't go all the way around because of that plastic mane, but it will wobble a good distance left and right, which is really appreciated. Now, it will also bend forwards on that hinge quite a good distance, but again, it will only go so far backwards. He's got ball joints in the shoulders, of course. There's the complementary bicep swivel and the double joint at the elbow, allowing the hand to go all the way back to the head there, which is really, really nice to see, especially on a larger character like this. There's a pin swivel at the wrist, allowing the hand to rotate all the way around, hinge forwards and backwards. There's a straight swivel at the waist, allowing the figure to spin all the way around, and then we have that hinge joint in the middle of the torso there, allowing the figure to bend forwards and backwards. And admittedly, it will go backwards a lot more than it will go forwards, but a good range of motion here. Ball joints in the hips, allowing the legs to kick out to the side. Complementary thigh swivel. The legs will kick forwards, backwards, and there's another double joint at the knee, allowing that lower leg to kick all the way back. And then we have this ankle rocker here as well, allowing the foot to hinge forward and backwards and rock from side to side. Accessories are a little bit more limited this time around. We do have another pair of open claw hands. I might have preferred to have a fist in here somewhere because they're quite similar to the hands we already have. And we get this alternate smiling head. This is a very sinister smile. I really, really like this. I have to say, I think Hasbro have done a fantastic job of really capturing the essence of this version of Sabretooth with both these head sculpts. I'm going to have to give this figure 5 stars. That's both figures in this set getting a 5-star treatment, which is pretty rare for me, but I'm really, really impressed. In fact, I'd go so far as to say I suspect that this Sabretooth figure will be on my top 10 action figures of 2024. I love it that much. I think it's absolutely fantastic. This probably has to be the definitive version of this version of the character that I have in my collection thus far. I can't really see them topping this, but hey, who's to know what's around the corner? This is an absolutely fantastic figure. I think it's just really brilliant. Before I wrap up, as a quick scale comparison, you can see how these two figures stand next to each other. Sabretooth, of course, is slightly taller, slightly above that 6-inch scale, which is fantastic, probably coming in about 7 inches. And then we have the Wolverine, who comes slightly under, probably about 5 inches. So again, these scale against each other beautifully, and they look absolutely spot on. An absolutely fantastic pair of figures. All in all then, this is a fantastic set, and I have to say, spoilers, but this is the best of the 4 sets in my opinion. I love this, I love everything about it. There's a lot of new things here, and I'm really glad that they put their heart and soul into this particular release, because I think this is the one that most fans are going to be clamouring for, because at the end of the day, Wolverine and Sabretooth go together like strawberries and cream. They're just a pair that you've got to have thrashing it out, and I think they look really good, and Hasbro have definitely done them justice in this set. So this is absolutely phenomenal. 5-star rating. Well done, Hasbro. This is actually a fantastic release. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.